The moment Alexander York stepped into the grand ballroom of the Bellingham Hotel, he knew this charity auction would be different from the countless others he'd attended. Not because of the glittering chandeliers that cast prismatic light across the marble floor, or the quiet murmur of Seattle's elite as they mingled with champagne flutes in hand. It was something else, a feeling that tonight would alter the course of his carefully constructed life. Alex, as his few close friends called him, had built a shipping empire from a single cargo vessel to a fleet that dominated the Pacific trade routes. At 36, he possessed the kind of wealth that made the auction's starting bids seem like pocket change. The annual Children's Hospital benefit was one of the few events where he didn't mind throwing around his millions. Children's health care was a cause that touched him deeply, though few knew why. "Mr. York, so pleased you could join us again this year," the event coordinator gushed, guiding him toward his reserved seat. "You were our most generous donor last year." "Happy to support the cause," Alex replied with practiced charm, straightening the cuffs of his bespoke suit as he took his place at table 8. He was reviewing the auction catalog when a subtle fragrance caught his attention, something fresh and citrusy with an undercurrent of vanilla. Alex glanced up to see a woman being seated beside him. She wore a simple midnight blue dress that seemed modest compared to the flashy designer gowns surrounding them, yet she outshone them all. "Sorry I'm late," she said to no one in particular, slightly breathless as she settled into her chair. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo, revealing a graceful neck adorned with a single strand of pearls. Alex found himself offering his hand before he'd made a conscious decision to do so. "Alexander York," she turned, and warm brown eyes met his. "Dani Reynolds," she replied, her handshake firm and unpretentious. "Though everyone calls me Dani." "Are you a regular at these events, Dani?" Alex asked, surprising himself with his interest. "First time, actually. I'm filling in for my boss at the last minute." "He came down with the flu and insisted someone from the foundation should be here." She smiled, a hint of nervousness in her expression. "I didn't realize until I arrived that this was quite so opulent." There was something refreshing about her candor. Most women he met at such events either knew exactly who he was and what he was worth, or pretended not to while angling for his attention. "The opulence serves its purpose," Alex replied. "The more these people feel like they're at the social event of the season, the more generously they donate." Dani nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. Though I admit I feel a bit out of my element. The decimal points on these starting bids have decimal points," he found himself chuckling. "And which foundation do you work for?" "The Collins Children's Recovery Foundation. We provide post-hospital support for families with critically ill children, everything from mental health services to practical assistance during recovery." Alex felt a tug of interest. "Important work." "It is," she agreed, and the passion in her voice was unmistakable. "These families go through hell during treatment, and when they finally get to take their child home, they're often facing a new set of challenges with limited support." Before he could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, and the auctioneer took the stage, welcoming everyone with practiced exuberance. Throughout the evening, Alex found his attention divided between the auction and the woman beside him. Dani seemed genuinely engaged in the proceedings, jotting notes in a small pad and occasionally whispering observations about particular items or bidders. When a private yacht experience came up for bid, Alex raised his paddle almost reflexively. The auctioneer's eyes lit up. Everyone knew Alexander York rarely participated unless he intended to win. "200,000 from Mr. York. Do I hear 250? The bidding escalated quickly, with a tech entrepreneur across the room driving the price higher. Alex maintained his composed demeanor, raising his paddle at intervals while engaging in casual conversation with Dani. "You must really want that yacht experience," she commented during a brief lull. Alex shrugged. "The yacht is mine. I donate it every year." Her eyes widened. "Your bidding on your own donation drives up the price," he explained with a wink. "It's for a good cause." The bidding concluded at $475,000, with Alex securing the win. Dani shook her head in amazement. So you just paid nearly $500,000 for something you already own? No, Alex corrected. I just donated nearly $500,000 to the hospital, and in return, I'll take some deserving kids and their families out on my yacht for a day they'll remember forever. Something shifted in her expression, a new appraisal. That's actually wonderful. The evening progressed with fine dining interspersed between auction lots. Alex found himself sharing more about his business than he typically would with a stranger. Dani listened attentively, asking insightful questions about international shipping regulations and environmental initiatives. My turn, he said eventually, after explaining how he'd revolutionized shipping routes across the Pacific. How did you get involved with the Collins Foundation? A shadow crossed her face briefly. My nephew, Jacob, was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 4. The Collins Foundation helped my sister's family through his recovery. When a position opened up 3 years ago, it seemed like the perfect way to pay it forward. And Jacob, her smile returned. Just started middle school, cancer-free for 5 years now. That's excellent news, Alex said sincerely. When the final item was auctioned, a package of sports memorabilia that went for an impressive sum, the event transitioned to a more casual atmosphere with music and dancing. Alex surprised himself by asking Dani if she'd like to dance. I should warn you, she said as they moved to the dance floor, I have 2 left feet. Fortunately, I'm ambidextrous, he replied, eliciting a laugh that resonated pleasantly in his chest. As they danced, Alex realized it had been a long time since he'd enjoyed a woman's company without agenda or pretense. When the evening drew to a close, he felt an unusual reluctance to say goodbye. It was a pleasure meeting you, Dani, he said as they stood near the coat check. Likewise, she replied, wrapping a modest wrap around her shoulders. Thanks for making what could have been an intimidating evening quite enjoyable. Alex hesitated, then pulled out a business card. If you ever need anything for the foundation connections, donations, resources, please reach out. She accepted the card, studying it for a moment before tucking it into her small purse. That's generous of you, I'll keep it in mind. He watched her walk away, feeling as though an opportunity was slipping through his fingers. It wasn't like him to be indecisive. Dani, he called after her. She turned, eyebrows raised questioningly. The foundation you mentioned, post-hospital support. I'd like to learn more. Would you have time for coffee sometime? A slow smile spread across her face. I always have time to discuss the foundation's work. Coffee would be nice. They exchanged numbers, and Alex found himself looking forward to a simple coffee date more than he had anticipated any business meeting in recent memory. 3 days later, they met at a quiet cafe near the foundation's offices. Dani arrived wearing a practical pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, looking every bit the dedicated professional. I brought some of our brochures and impact reports, she said after they'd exchanged greetings. I wasn't sure how detailed you wanted to get. Alex smiled. Let's start with the basics and see where the conversation takes us. Over the next hour, Dani outlined the foundation's programs with contagious enthusiasm. Alex was impressed by both the scope of their work and the efficiency with which they operated. He found himself asking increasingly specific questions, drawing on his business acumen to understand their financial model. You're not what I expected, Dani admitted as she stirred her second cappuccino. What did you expect, honestly? Someone more concerned with the tax write-off than the actual impact of his donations. Alex leaned back, studying her. You don't pull your punches, do you? Not when it comes to the foundation, she said unapologetically. I've met too many wealthy donors who see charity as a social obligation rather than a moral one. Instead of being offended, Alex found her directness refreshing. And what category have you decided I fall into? Dani considered him for a moment. I'm reserving judgment. But you ask good questions, and you seem to genuinely care about efficiency and outcomes. That's promising. By the time they parted ways, Alex had decided to make a significant donation to the Collins Foundation, specifically earmarked for their family counseling program. But more surprisingly, he'd also asked Dani to dinner to continue the conversation. He'd said, though they both recognized it for the pretense it was. Their first dinner led to a second, then a third. Alex found himself increasingly drawn to Dani's combination of compassion and practicality. She was unlike anyone in his usual social circle, unimpressed by wealth yet unintimidated by it. On their fourth date, walking along the waterfront after dining at a small Italian restaurant Dani had recommended, she finally asked the question he'd been expecting. Why children's causes? You never mentioned having kids of your own, and you haven't talked about nieces or nephews. Alex was silent for a long moment, watching a ferry glide across the moonlit water. I was sick as a child, he finally said, severe heart defect. I spent more time in hospitals than out of them until I was 11. Dani's hand found his, her fingers warm against his palm. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. My parents sacrificed everything for my treatments, second mortgaged our house, worked multiple jobs. My father had a small boat rental business that he had to sell piece by piece. Alex hadn't spoken of this in years, yet with Dani, the words came easily. When I recovered, I promised myself that someday I'd make sure other families didn't have to choose between saving their child and financial ruin. Is that why you started your shipping company? He nodded. My father loved the water. After he sold his last boat, something in him seemed to die. When I was well enough, he'd take me down to the docks just to watch the ships. He'd tell me about cargo routes and international trade, dreaming aloud about what could have been. And you made his dreams come true, Dani said softly. Too late for him to see it, Alex replied, the old regret surfacing. He died when I was in college. Heart attack. Dani squeezed his hand. But you honored him in the best way possible. You're continuing his legacy every day. In that moment, looking into her understanding eyes, Alex felt a connection he'd never experienced before. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Instead, she rose slightly on her toes to meet him halfway. Their first kiss was gentle, almost tentative, yet Alex felt it throughout his entire body. When they parted, Dani's smile held a shy quality he hadn't seen before. I should probably tell you, she said, that I have a strict policy against dating donors. Alex pretended to consider this seriously. I suppose I could stop donating, she laughed, the sound carrying across the water. That would defeat the whole purpose of my job, Mr. York. Then I guess we're at an impasse, Miss Reynolds, he replied, pulling her closer. I guess we are, she agreed before their lips met again. In the weeks that followed, Alex found himself reorganizing his typically rigid schedule to make time for Dani. They discovered shared interests in classic films and hiking, spending weekends exploring trails in the Cascade Mountains. Alex introduced Dani to sailing, teaching her to navigate his smaller day sailor before inviting her aboard the yacht she'd seen auctioned at their first meeting. This isn't exactly what I pictured when you said boat, Dani commented as she stepped onto the gleaming 120-foot vessel. Technically, it's a yacht, Alex corrected with a grin. Technically, it's obscene, she countered, but her smile took the sting from her words. Though I can imagine how magical this would be for the kids from the hospital. That was Dani always thinking of others, always connecting experiences back to the people she served. It was one of the countless things Alex was coming to love about her, love. The realization that he was falling in love with Dani didn't come as a thunderclap, but as a quiet certainty that grew stronger each day. By their third month of dating, Alex knew she was unlike anyone he'd ever met and that he wanted her in his life permanently. The challenge was convincing Dani that their worlds could truly merge. Despite their deepening relationship, she maintained certain boundaries. She preferred staying at her modest apartment rather than his waterfront penthouse. She insisted on paying her way when possible, though her nonprofit salary was a fraction of what Alex spent on business lunches. And she remained fiercely independent in her work, refusing to leverage their relationship for fundraising advantages. I need to know that what we have is separate from what I do, she explained one evening as they prepared dinner in his rarely used kitchen. The Foundation's work is too important to be complicated by personal relationships. I understand that, Alex said, watching her chop vegetables with practiced efficiency. But you're important too, Dani, to me. She paused, knife hovering over a red pepper. I know, and you're important to me. That's why I'm being careful. Careful of what, exactly? Dani set down the knife, turning to face him fully. Careful of losing myself. Your world is overwhelming, Alex. The money, the influence, the constant evaluation of everything in terms of its monetary value. I've seen what happens when people from my world step into yours. What happens? He asked softly. They change, priorities shift, values erode. Suddenly, they're discussing which charity gala has the best swag bags instead of which one makes the biggest impact. Her expression was serious. I don't want that to happen to me. Alex moved closer, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I would never want to change who you are. It's who you are that makes me. He hesitated, then decided to simply say it. It's who you are that makes me love you. Her eyes widened. It was the first time either of them had used that word. Alex, you don't have to say it back, he hurried to add. I just wanted you to know, but Dani shook her head, a smile slowly spreading across her face. I was going to say, it's about time you figured that out. I've been loving you for weeks. Relief and joy surged through him as he pulled her into his arms, dinner preparations forgotten as they celebrated this new acknowledgement of what had been growing between them. Their relationship deepened, but Dani's concerns weren't entirely unfounded. They encountered occasional friction when their different perspectives collided. Alex's solution-oriented approach sometimes clashed with Dani's more nuanced understanding of social issues. His instinct to throw money at problems occasionally frustrated her belief in systemic change. 6 months into their relationship, these tensions came to a head when Alex proposed establishing a major new wing at the Children's Hospital, with Dani's foundation receiving dedicated space and enhanced funding. It would revolutionize the way post-treatment care is integrated into the hospital experience, Alex explained excitedly, spreading architectural renderings across her coffee table. The Collins Foundation would have permanent offices right where the families need you most. Instead of sharing his enthusiasm, Dani grew quiet. What's wrong? I thought you'd be thrilled. Did you discuss this with anyone at the foundation before commissioning these plans? She asked carefully. I wanted it to be a surprise for you, Dani sighed. Alex, this is exactly what I've been worried about. You can't just reshape an entire organization's operational model without consulting the people who run it. I'm not reshaping anything, he defended. I'm providing resources. Isn't that what donors are supposed to do? Resources, yes. Direction, no. Dani's voice remained calm, but he could see the frustration in her eyes. This plan would fundamentally alter how we work, where we work, who we report to. These aren't decisions a donor should make unilaterally. Alex felt his own frustration rising. I'm not just any donor, Dani. I thought I was your partner. You are my partner in life, but in my professional world you need to respect boundaries. She gestured to the plans. This isn't respect, this is benevolent control. Her words stung, partly because he recognized their truth. He had approached this like a business acquisition, not a collaborative effort with an organization he claimed to value. I'm sorry, he said after a long pause. You're right, I overstepped. Dani's expression softened. Your intentions are good, Alex. Your execution just needs work. That night marked a turning point in their relationship. Alex began to truly understand that loving Dani meant embracing her independence and wisdom, not just admiring them from a distance. And Dani began to see that Alex's desire to make grand gestures came from genuine passion, not a need to control. In the months that followed, they found a better balance. Alex learned to consult before acting in anything related to Dani's work. He attended foundation board meetings as an observer, not an enforcer. And when he did make suggestions, they were offered as possibilities to be evaluated by those with expertise. For her part, Dani became more comfortable in Alex's world. She stopped reflexively rejecting the privileges his wealth afforded them, recognizing that accepting a private jet flight occasionally didn't compromise her values. She introduced Alex to the families served by the foundation, allowing him to see firsthand the impact of thoughtful intervention. On their one-year anniversary, Alex planned a special evening that honored their journey together. He arranged a private dinner at the Bellingham Hotel in the very ballroom where they'd first met. The space was transformed with subtle lighting and flowers, with just one table set in the center where hundreds had been the year before. "This is incredible," Dani said as they entered the empty ballroom. "How did you manage to rent the entire space?" Alex smiled. "I may have mentioned to the event coordinator that I had important plans involving the woman I met at last year's auction." Over dinner, they reminisced about their first impressions of each other. Dani admitted she'd initially pegged him as just another rich guy with more money than compassion. Alex confessed he'd been captivated from the moment she sat beside him. "There was something different about you," he explained, "something real in a room full of carefully constructed images." After dessert, Alex suggested they dance just as they had a year ago. As they swayed to the music of the string quartet he'd hired, he felt a sense of rightness that transcended any business success he'd ever achieved. "You've changed my life," he murmured against her hair, "in ways I never imagined possible." Dani leaned back to look up at him. "You've changed mine too, though I'm still keeping my apartment," he laughed. "Your independence is safe with me, though I was hoping you might consider spending more time at my place." "Oh, and why is that?" Alex took a deep breath. This was the moment he'd been planning for weeks. He stepped back slightly, reaching into his pocket. "Because I'm hoping it might become our place." He opened the small velvet box to reveal a diamond ring that sparkled in the soft lighting, elegant but not ostentatious, just like the woman he'd chosen it for. "Dani Reynolds, will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes as she looked from the ring to his face. For a terrifying moment, Alex wondered if he'd misread everything. "Yes," she finally whispered. "Yes, I will marry you, Alexander York." Relief and joy washed through him as he slid the ring onto her finger. When he pulled her close again, their kiss held all the promise of their future together. Their engagement announcement made the society pages. Of course, Seattle's shipping magnate and the nonprofit director was too good a story to ignore. But they managed to keep their actual wedding intimate, with just close friends and family gathered at a small coastal property Alex owned. Dani's sister and nephew Jacob were there, the boy now healthy and vibrant, serving proudly as ring bearer. Alex's mother, elegant in her 70s, beamed with pride as she watched her son marry a woman who clearly adored him for himself, not his fortune. They wrote their own vows, each promising to honor the other's strengths and support their passions. Alex vowed to remember that the greatest wealth was in human connection, not financial assets. Dani promised to embrace their shared future without fear of losing her core values. As they exchanged rings against a backdrop of ocean waves, Alex marveled at how a chance seating arrangement at a charity auction had led to this moment of perfect contentment. Their honeymoon was a blend of their different styles a week at an exclusive resort in Bali, followed by 2 weeks volunteering with a children's health initiative in nearby villages. They returned refreshed and more united than ever, ready to build their life together. That life took unexpected turns in the years that followed. Alex restructured his company to allow more time for philanthropic work, personally overseeing a new foundation they created together that focused on supporting children with critical illnesses and their families. Dani continued her work with the Collins Foundation, but also became a respected voice in healthcare advocacy, testifying before state legislators about the importance of comprehensive care beyond hospital walls. Their family grew with the birth of twins, a boy and a girl, who inherited their father's determined spirit and their mother's compassionate heart. Alex found profound joy in being the kind of present, engaged father he'd always wanted for himself. On the 5th anniversary of their meeting, they returned to the Bellingham Hotel for that year's Children's Hospital benefit. This time, they arrived together, greeted warmly by staff who remembered the romance that had begun in their ballroom. As they took their seats at table 8, by Alex's special request, he squeezed Dani's hand. 5 years ago, I walked into this room expecting nothing more than an evening of obligatory charity and networking, he said softly. Instead, I found the rest of my life sitting in the chair beside me. Dani leaned into him, her smile as radiant as it had been that first night, and I found a partner I never knew I was looking for. As the auction began, they exchanged knowing glances, remembering how it all began. When a yacht experience came up for bid, the same yacht, now used regularly for special outings for children from the hospital, they raised their paddle together, continuing the tradition that had first revealed Alex's character to the woman who would become his wife. Later, as they danced beneath the same chandeliers that had witnessed their beginning, Alex reflected on how profoundly his life had changed since that night. His success had once been measured in ships and contracts, in assets and acquisitions. Now he measured it in moments of connection with Dani, with their children, with the families whose lives they touched through their work. "Penny for your thoughts," Dani murmured, looking up at him with the same warm brown eyes that had captured his attention 5 years ago. "I was just thinking about value," he replied, "and how meeting you helped me understand what's truly valuable in this life." "And what did you conclude, Mr. York?" he smiled, pulling her closer. "That the most valuable thing I ever did was bid on a yacht I already owned, just so I could sit next to you for one evening." Dani laughed, the sound still as captivating as it had been that first night. "Best investment you ever made." "Without question," Alex agreed, sealing the sentiment with a kiss that promised many more years of the love they'd found when neither was looking for it, a love that had begun with a simple seat assignment at a charity auction and grown into a lifetime of shared purpose and joy.